Oh, shoot. Chat. I have chat for these, don't I? Hang on. There we go. Sorry, guys. Okay. So, welcome to our latest Loreweek. I actually have a bunch to talk about, but unfortunately it's all stuff you're expecting. But I've been kind of trying not to talk about it for the last week, so I could go ahead and, actually discuss it today. So the first thing I want to say real quick is that I have been rather sick lately. Yesterday I had severe dizzy spells, and I'm actually still having a few dizzy attacks today. They're much less severe than they were yesterday, but I'm still having issues like standing up straight and whatnot. It no longer feels like the room is spinning, and I no longer feel like I'm clinging to the wall when I'm laying down on my bed. So that's good. But I just want to say that because I'm still kind of wooga wooga. Second thing I want to say is, obviously, and this is a little bit for historical perspective for those of you not aware, E3 happened in the last week, so most of what we're talking about is actually E3 related. Now, I'm going to go and jump right into this, because I've got literally 2 pages of games to just kind of discuss as we go through here. The first thing I want to mention, real quick, is the fact, something about WoW. So I actually, for those of you who saw my yesterday stream, and of course it's up on the YouTube channel, the stream channel as well. We had a we played around on the PTR. We showed off some of the new mechanics, some of the new aspects of Legion, the new graphics render radius. Talked about some of the underpinnings of what they changed with the engine, what they did with the water rendering, all sorts of stuff like that. Good stuff all around, but the big thing I want to discuss is the fact that the developers finally admitted that the once-a-year expansion idea was a bad idea. And I've felt this for some time, for many different reasons. But the biggest and most obvious is something that I've been saying literally for years. And that is the fact that there is such a thing as a bottleneck when it comes to MMO design. You can't just toss out more money and more people and make more content happen. There's always going to be bottlenecks in terms of designing new content. And so there's literally a finite point at which you're not going to generate content any faster than this one theoretical maximum speed, if you will, right? And trying to force an expansion every year is basically trying to bash your head against that bottleneck, or those bottlenecks, I should say, there's more than one, constantly, which just isn't going to work. And I feel, and the developer, the whole interview agreed with me on this. The idea was the fact that, sorry, I'm still really out of it. It was engendering the wrong attitude at Blizzard. They were having issues keeping up with that and trying to maintain this whole, oh my gosh, we need to be pushing out content, oh god. And it's also, I like the fact that they flat out admitted one of the reasons why that Warlords failed was what I was telling you guys during the WoW run, which is this exact same attitude. They were like, all right, push out the expansion and then walk away from it and stop supporting it. They have flat out said they're going to be being way more supportive of the idea of content patches in Legion, and they've also been they also have been working on Legion since Kata, basically. So fingers crossed that Legion will actually be good. That's basically the only non-E3 news I have to discuss. So let's go ahead and start going down the list here. As ever, please feel free to toss out questions or thoughts. This is, of course, intended to be kind of an interactive lore week. It's the whole point. That's why it's a lore week as opposed to a I'm informing you kind of a thing. I'm not Jim Sterling. And hi, Jaina Proudmore. Hi, everyone, by the way. Happy Father's Day to those to whom it applies, here in the States, of course. So let's go down the list. I have a freaking gargantuan list. I'm going to just kind of start rapid-fire tossing out thoughts and ideas here. For those of you who don't want to actually have watched the entire E3 videos I tossed out or haven't seen all the E3 stuff, and of course, I covered some E3 stuff offline. I was just sitting in chat while some of that happened while I was working on stuff for the show. So first of all, there's a game called Oxygen Not Included. Thank you, Deacon. Oxygen Not Included it looks a lot like a few other, base simulation kind of games I've seen before. It looks like it's fairly well developed. I'm not exactly going to be against a game just because of the fact that it's using a similar premise to another game. That's ridiculous. But I did like what I saw about it. It does look interesting. It looks like something I'd probably pick up on sale, to be completely honest with you. But I like the fact that they're at least trying something with that. And I like the actual setting as well. The whole space thing as opposed to built into the ground or whatever. That's actually all I got on that one. Not a lot else. As ever, feel free to jump in with thoughts as you go. The next thing I want to point out and talk about is the fact that I'm going to change the chat just a little bit. Like this. There we go. Next thing I want to talk about is Mountain Blade 2. Bannerlords. Now, I actually poked at what I believe was the first Mountain Blade, the very first one, and I found it to be just kind of eh. It was one of those player-generated content games, and those in general tend to not be the kind of thing I like, to be just completely honest with you. I don't like being given a massive, okay, it's the difference between being at a playground as a child and being given a giant pit of sand as a child. Make sense? So, like, the playground has stuff that the developers created in the terms of the slide and the stuff you can interact with and have fun with, right? The giant pit of sand has sand that you have to make into something interesting and fun. And I'm not actually all that... I'm not particularly creative. I'm not that good at being given a blank piece of paper and saying, go! I'm just not that good at that kind of thing. So it's always been a coffee situation for me when it comes to player-generated content games. This is also one of the reasons why EVE Online never really stuck with me. And Evocron Mercenary is another example of a game that I just never got into. So when I first played Mountain Blade, I was like, okay, this is a neat concept. And I played for a while, and I hit the inevitable point that I always hit when it comes to player-generated content games. Well, now what? And I just couldn't think of anything to do. I couldn't think of anything that felt like it was fun. It all felt meaningless to me because of the same reason that it always does. Now, that being said, several of my viewers have been very interested in the Mountain Blade series, and several of them have actually been saying, Arsh, you really need to give this series a look at. And I finally caved this year, and I said, all right, which one should I look at? And a few people said you should wait till the new one. And I'm like, well, when's the new one come out? Well, we don't know yet. Well, so obviously Mountain Blade Bannerlords, it was announced. I believe we have a release date. I don't remember it off the top of my head. Forgive me. So, I look at it and I'm like, okay, I'll go ahead and pick that up. And it looks like, and as Deacon just pointed out, apparently Bannerlords is going to have a lot more developer generated content. And is going to have a little bit more of a narrative approach to it. And in general, I like what I saw about the Siege gameplay. I don't know if Siege gameplay has already been in the Mountain Blade series. Feel free to talk about this. But I do like the idea of Siege gameplay. I like the idea of being the Lord who goes out and sieges the castle along with your troops. It reminds me of a scene in Witcher 2, actually, where the king, whose name I forget, forgive me, right at the beginning, is actually sieging the castle right there along with the rest of his troops. Deacon points out something interesting. This is actually relevant, and I meant to point this out as well. Sorry, I'm having issues. I have a headache, too, on top of everything else. The narrative is fully optional in Mountain Blade. Full test, thank you. So for anybody who wants the sandbox, who wants the blank sheet of paper, that will still be in Bannerlord. And actually, when I do an exploration of that game, whenever it comes out, which I do plan to do, by the way, I actually intend to try out both sides of that picture to see how it works. It looks awesome. I'm interested, The next game I want to go down... I'm not, covering just PC games, by the way. I'm just going down the list kind of in order. So, please don't accuse me of that crap. I'm tired of this. Apparently, Siege gameplay in the old games just existed of ladder. I can just picture it. Yes, I know, Dragon Cat. I found the interview myself, and 50 people have told me about that. I have a feeling a lot of people took issue with my speculation. Hey, Thomas. Okay, next game I want to talk about is Tyranny, the new Obsidian game. For those of you not aware, I have been a huge fan of Obsidian for basically ever since their inception. I love Neverwinter Nights 2. I love Fallout New Vegas. I love Pillars of Eternity. I actually hope to finish it someday. So, very, very much looking forward to a new Obsidian game, regardless of other circumstances. Now, I didn't get a lot of looking at it when it was being announced, but I went back. No, I have not, Dakota, sorry. I went back and I was like, all right, I want to figure out more about this game. I want to know more about this game. And I read the developers' blogs, and I watched the videos that they released at E3. I pretty much dug into the game as much as it was able to do. There's actually not a lot of information right now about Tyranny. However, here's what I know so far, as ever, sharing it with you. Oh yeah, KOTOR 2, excuse me. Yeah, it's a shame they don't have Chris Avellone anymore. He's working on a Planescape Torment sequel, though, so I'm okay with that. First of all, Pillars of Eternity engine, which I'm automatically okay with. I like that kind of isometric gameplay. I always have. I think it's actually a type of gameplay that can age well, as long as the UE supports it, and I enjoyed the UE in Pillars of Eternity, so with it. Next thing I wanted to talk about, one thing I actually disagree with, the only thing I've seen that I don't like about Tyranny, is that they're using a skill-based use it and expand it system. Now, I actually want to talk about this just a little bit, really quick. Actually, let's talk about that last. Let's save that for last. Let's talk about the premise, for those of you not aware. So, this is actually kind of a cool premise, and I'm a little surprised more games haven't done this kind of a premise. The premise here is that there was this big, epic, Western RPG-style conflict between good and evil, and the bad guys won. And there's this terrible overlord who has conquered the land, and he is oppressed, and he's this terrible despot. And then the game starts, now that the bad guys already won. Which actually is just by itself is a cool premise. I'm already on board with that. You play someone who is a fate bringer or a fate binder. I actually can't remember which right now. And you get to go ahead and do, whatever you want to do within this new world. There is the implication, has not been 100% confirmed, that you can do your standard thing and basically go and try to, be a good guy. But the intention is for you to be a bad guy. And now this is where I give the story designers and the perspective here respect. The idea is that you don't have to be a typical bad guy. You can be several different gradients of bad guy. Let's just use some generic examples here, like the neutral evil, out for himself but doesn't actually want to cause harm for others, just prioritizes himself kind of a bad guy. I'm saying him because I am a guy. Please don't pull any gender stuff into this. You could be the kind of bad guy who is very much interested in ambition and wants to, kind of a lawful evil sort of, I want to rise up to the top, overthrow the overlord, rule the land in my stead. One of the other ones that was mentioned is you could play a chaotic evil type bad guy, where you just are interested in hurting people and ruining people's lives, and you just enjoy the chaos and the cruelty, and you're a psychopath. And these three things are things that have been specifically mentioned by the developers and by the writers that they're going to allow you to do, in addition to being a good guy. I don't know if there's going to be anything past these four archetypes. I kind of hope so, because it would be actually really interesting to have something a little bit more neutral instead of evil or good, which I think would actually be really neat. Like the idea to play a more Boba Fett type character, if you will. I would argue, I know some people disagree with me, I would argue Boba Fett is very much a neutral character, neither good nor evil. So that's cool. Everything about it looks cool. I like the premise. I like the aspect. I like the developer who's making it. Oh yeah, speaking of Obsidian games that I do like, and a game that deserves a little bit more praise than it gets, is game I can't remember the name of. Hang on, I'm pulling up my Steam right now. I'm sorry, I need to plug this game because nobody ever plugs this game, and I need to plug it. It'll be right at the top here. Alpha Protocol, that's the name of it. Alpha Protocol. That game deserves more love than it gets. So anyways, so that's Tyranny. Let's talk about the gameplay thing, because I actually have a little bit to discuss here. So they're using use a skill and it raises system. They're trying to separate the progression as far away from levels as possible. Now, for those of you who have never done this kind of a thing before, just go play a Bethesda game. In other words, Final Fantasy II is a good example of this kind of a system. Virtually any of the Saga series, the Final Fantasy Legends 1 through 3 on the Game Boy, the actual romancing sagas, all that stuff is, well, most of those, I should say, are the use a skill and it raises it kind of leveling system, right? We've also seen this in a game you've probably never actually heard of for the N64, called Quest 64. And, yeah. Now, to make my point clear, I'm going to go ahead and just start with my big point, and I want to hear you guys' thoughts while I start to explain why I have this point. I don't like that system at all. Okay, I do not like that gameplay leveling system. Now, it is worth noting part of the reason for that is because I'm suddenly having TMNT flashbacks. Hey, Aureus. Part of the reason I don't like that system is I've never seen it implemented well. Ever. The closest I've seen to a system that was like that was implemented well, was an MMO called Asheron's Call. Now, Asheron's Call didn't actually do that system, though. Asheron's Call had a skill system, but in Asheron's Call, what you would do is you would gain experience from all activities, and then experience would be spent on skills. The impetus, the agency of what you level was on you. You could do anything to level your various skills, and then you could distribute it yourself, as opposed to, in order to raise lock picking, you have to go pick locks. Now, so there's several flaws with this system. I'm getting a little bit better cranky. I'm still having issues. There's several flaws with this. So first of all, it tends to lead towards lopsided gameplay. In other words, you get to the point where, let's say you start the game, and you start off the game, let's just use an example here, using melee-type skills and blocking, okay? So those are the skills that level initially. Now, a lot of games will up the difficulty as pretty much linearly, or they'll scale to you. Both of these have the same flaw, actually, now that I think about it. So now you're fighting harder stuff, and the only things you have that you can use in order to fight these things are the skills you've already leveled, which was melee weapons and a shield. So you keep using melee weapons and a shield, and then you keep doing this until you reach the point where you fight stuff that isn't really weak to melee weapons and a shield, or maybe you need some kind of other skill, some kind of conversation skill, or lock picking, or something like that. That's what I mean by lopsided gameplay. It's very easy for seesaw effect to take place here with regards to you getting a little bit too specialized into something you just kind of don't actually want to be specialized in. And fixing that after the fact is usually not available. That requires good game design in order to allow you to fix this kind of a situation. Which, again, I've never really seen a game implement this properly. Because let's say you're fighting like level 30 stuff, and you're level 30 equivalent. Because in your melee skills, but you really want to switch to mage. Well, your mage level 1 equivalent, because you haven't really leveled it, or maybe mage level 5 equivalent, right? You can already see the problem here. So that's the first problem with this skill-based system. The second problem is it encourages something. So I had a friend of mine who was playing Oblivion for the first time, okay? And as he was playing it, he very quickly found out how the system works. He didn't know there were trainers that you could raise skills with. I do personally think that trainers in Morrowind and in Oblivion, those two specifically, help offset the skill problem. Because I don't actually raise skills by using them in Oblivion or Morrowind. I raise them by dumping gold on them. I treat gold as my experience in Oblivion and Morrowind. And that mindset has helped make those games a lot more enjoyable, in my opinion. But he didn't know about those at all. So he went to an inn, or to a house that he bought, sat there and started, and conjure beast, conjure beast, conjure beast, conjure beast, conjure beast, out of mana, rest for an hour, conjure beast, conjure beast, conjure beast, conjure beast. Because in his perspective, that was the only option for raising it. And he's kind of right. The only alternative is to do exactly what Takoida, or it wasn't Takoida, it was, no, it was Takoida said. The other alternative is, as you're running from dungeon to dungeon on the thing, just raise, conjure me. Just spamming your spells, spamming your alteration spells, spamming your conjuration spells, spamming your fireballs and everything you see, just to level them as you're going. It's the only way to actually raise that stuff. Hey, Raskar. See, yeah, that's the thing, Sonic Doctor. I get the appeal of the skill-based system. I get the appeal of the you use it, you raise it system. But in practice, as a game mechanic, it just doesn't work. It never has. No, I have not, Absurdity. I've been asked about that recently, but I have not, no. It doesn't work. It doesn't actually function unless you add something else that actually enables you to have a secondary method of leveling it, like in Oblivion, where you have the trainers, or like in Morrowind, where you have the dummies, or like in Asheron's Call, where you get X that you can just distribute like that, you know? So, I'm automatically disinclined towards this style of gameplay. Yeah, exactly, crouching across the world map. I've done that too. So I'm automatically disinclined to like the skill-based system. Like I said, I have never personally seen a pure skill-based system implemented properly. I've only seen skill-based systems where there's some other thing to bypass the skill-based system that have made it work. I gotta be honest, I've actually, yeah, a respec tool would be helpful too. Like, that would help fix the lopsided problem I mentioned earlier. I'm still gonna try it. I'm still sold on Tyranny. But yeah, I hope you guys could understand my concerns here. I'm having a really hard time concentrating because of the headache and the dizziness. See you around, Samurai. Next game I want to talk about is Turing Test. Turing Test. So I don't actually have as much to say about this as I was kind of hoping. Because when I look at Turing Test, and I want to stress, I don't mean this as a negative or a derogatory, I'm seeing a new Portal game. It looks like another first-person FPP, which is first-person puzzle game. A first-person platformer game, in other words. And I like that. I am in favor of that. There's another game out there whose name I can never think of, that had John Delancey doing the voice in it. That was another attempt at a first-person puzzle platformer. And I say attempt because it was a great concept that kind of failed for a couple of reasons. But nevertheless, I like the idea of that kind of gameplay. I feel like, despite Portal, we haven't seen as many games of that genre that we could, especially not well-done ones. So, definite positive. Looking forward to it. I tried really hard to find more out about the story, and I failed. Other than the obvious reference to the Turing Test, I have absolutely no idea what the heck the plot of the game is. My best guess is the fact that we are playing someone who is performing a live-action Turing Test throughout the course of the gameplay. Quantum Conundrum. That's the game I was thinking of. It's not actually a bad game. It's just it suffered some issues because it tried to be too much of a jumping platformer, and it basically required a little bit too much of you. So Turing Test looks cool. There's another game. So I siled here. I almost never have this problem. Okay. But I scribbled a lot of these notes kind of rapid fire when I was getting ready for this Loreweek. And one of them said dual Unimus. And I'm looking at that like, what the hell is that? So I'm like, okay, no problem. I'll try and do a Google search. Google will help me. No, Google didn't help me. I'm okay, maybe I'll try search. No, this didn't help me. I'm just staring at my notes like, what the hell did I write? What I was actually referring to is a game that's coming out called Dual Universe. Anyways, Dual Universe looks like a competition for Elite Dangerous / No Man's Sky / the other one whose name I can't think of right now. All three of which have kind of jumped into a market that has been starving for a very long time. Freelancer-style gameplay with a little bit of, open world and fluid motion and that kind of ground to space combat, that kind of a thing. Now, I kind of mentioned this earlier when it came to Mountain Blade. Everything I've seen about Dual Universe, Star Citizen, thank you, that's the third one. Everything I've seen so far about Dual Universe makes me think I'm not going to be interested in it, to be completely honest with you. First of all, it is a player-generated content game. It's all about you being a person who can build your own ship and build your own cities and rebuild civilization and jump from planet to planet and go through space and all that fun stuff. It looks very well presented, very well constructed, but again, player-based content or player-generated content. Again, it's the sandbox, the blank sheet of paper all over again. So I look at that, I'm like, I don't have much to say about it. It is an MMO apparently, which I find very curious. Not sure what to make of that one, and it looks nice. Like, it does actually have some good graphic appeal, and I do like the idea of literally just building a ship, hopping in it, and flying to the next planet. That's a neat concept. But again, no actual developer-generated content from what I understand. It's just you hop in and you try to rebuild or destroy civilization as you see fit alongside other players. Shrug. Next game. So I told you guys I'd be getting out of PC games. So we're finally getting out of PC games here. And then we'll go back to PC games in a moment. I know I'm going to be lynched over this one, but there's a new game coming out that they apparently have a release date for that I'm not excited for. It's called The Last Guardian. Now, let me explain my point, okay? First of all, it's really hard to get excited about a game that's been in development for X years. I've talked about this problem before. I need to come up with a term for it at some point, because it just kind of keeps happening. I mean, we had it with StarCraft 2, we had it with Duke Nukem Forever, we are still having it with FF15, we're having it with Last Guardian right now. It's this massive... the longer it takes, the longer development time it takes, and this is true not just for me, this is true just in marketing terms in general. The longer it takes for it to come out, the more interest just kind of wanes. This is one of the reasons, and I'll talk about this in a minute, this is one of the reasons why FF15 has been doing all the things it's been doing. Because they're like, crap, we've been making this game for 8 years. Quick, get interest back into the game. Quick. Now, hey, don't bite your tongue, Case. No, please speak up, please. Duke Nukem Syndrome. You know what? Sure, we'll call it Duke Nukem Syndrome. Because it's so hard to stay hyped for a game for 8 years. I myself have problems staying hyped for a game for 8 years. You know? I am just now finally starting to feel hyped for Legion, which is coming out in 9 weeks at this point. You know? For me, the closer to its release, the more I am capable of feeling hyped. And that's just me. Like, if you announce a game that's coming out next year, my usual response is going to be, a year is too long for me to stay hyped. I just put it into the back of my mind and forget about it. I have to be about at the month or two range before it really starts to affect me personally. But when you hit the 8-year range, holy crap. Now, I don't actually know how long Last Guardian's been in production. I use 8 years because that's the FF15 example. But regardless of... So that's the first big reason why why I'm having so much difficulty feeling hype for Last Guardian. In fact, I made the comment, and I actually stand by this, that... yeah, no kidding, Deacon. I stand by this statement. I will believe Last Guardian's actually coming out when it's actually out and playable. In other words, I legitimately still have... it's not like I say it's not going to come out, but I would not be surprised at this point in time if it still gets pushed back. It would not be the first time. Now, let me clarify my statement. I hope it comes out in October, whatever the actual release date was. I really do. I want it to finally come out. I want people like Case now. I want people to actually get this game and for it to be awesome. I do. Okay? 2006? Oh my god. 10 years. Excuse me. 10 years with FF15. Yikes. What was the 8-year one? Oh, maybe I'm thinking of Tor. Tor took a while. No, Tor was like 6 years. Anyways, point being, you know, so I really, 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 really hope Last Guardian comes out, comes out at the release date and is awesome. Let me make that absolutely clear, okay? But I cannot be super excited for it, and here's the second reason why, and this is where I'm going to get crucified. I'm not actually a huge fan of Team Ico. Ico itself was just kind of for me. And Shadows of the Colossus is a game that I played once and have never actually felt the desire to play a second time. It is actually, by my own definitions, a popcorn game, aka something that had no replay value for me. Something that was fun, that was good when I played it, and then I put it down and I haven't gone back. And I have received so much flack for this opinion, which is understandable. They're very, very popular games, especially Shadows of the Colossus, which is a very well crafted game. I've never even heard of that, Dakota. So like I said, feel free to crucify me. It wouldn't be the first time. But this is the second reason why I'm not hyped for Last Guardian. Now, if Last Guardian is a PS4 exclusive, then admittedly I probably won't even touch it or look at it. I mean, the PS4 problem rearing its ugly head once again. If it comes out on PC, I'll at least consider it. I'm sure a lot of my viewers would like to see me take a look at that. I will also say one thing about Team Ico as a positive thing. Team Ico is they do their specific niche that they do gameplay design wise. They do extremely well, and they're really, really good at firing, at going into that exact little corridor of, okay, you're here, not a lot of plot-centric stuff. It's for you to interpret what the hell is actually going on. A lot of visual storytelling, big epic scope, all these little things that they're really good at. They're really good at. And it does look like The Last Guardian, from everything I've seen so far, is going to be that again. And I'm just predicting it right now. The big guardian animal thing is going to die in the game. Just putting that out there. So these are my thoughts on Last Guardian. Like I said, I hope it comes out and I hope it's good. I'll pause for a moment for people to continue to tell me how horrible I am. As we switch to a new song. I've just got it on random, if you're wondering. So, next game I want to talk about is FF15. That was actually Silver Surfer on the NES, Loreweek. Good guess, though. What if we have to kill it? Then it shall die! So... Final Fantasy 15. Now, I've already kind of talked about the big thing I want to talk about. The fact that it's taken 10... See, now here's the thing. The developer in me understands that FF15 has not been in development for 10 years. However, the person in me has been waiting for FF13 Versus for 10 frickin' years. This is a game that was announced 10 years ago. Which, once again, goes back to that whole Duke Nukem problem. The Duke Nukem syndrome, which I'm just going to start calling it. I'm borrowing that term. This is one of the problems that game developers... that game publishers and marketing people never seem to really understand. You don't start announcing a game until you're actually at a reasonable point in development cycle. You don't say, hey, we've started working on a game. Now, Square Enix has always been bad about this. They have said many, many times, hey, we are looking forward, we are going to start working on this game. No release date, no nothing, just, hey, we're going to release that. Square Enix has been doing this for decades, and it's irritating. It drives me crazy. The idea being... Now, I get the perspective. They're trying to let you know that they're working on something, but God's sakes, you do understand that waiting fatigue is a thing, right? Now, not really progressive. My biggest... So, I mentioned... This is the other thing I want to talk about with regards to FF15. The fact that they are... really pushing FF15 in order to try and counteract this. And credit where credit is due, they are really throwing the weight of Square Enix behind FF15 in order to try and do something against the colossal wave of Duke Nukem Syndrome. Again, 10 years. That's insane. I thought it was 8. 10. Think about where you were in your life 10 years ago. Seriously, pause for a moment. Here, hang on. Pause for a moment. Think about where you were 10 years ago. Think about how much has happened in the last decade. Think about how different you are now from where you were then. Think about how much has occurred in the world, how much the landscape has changed, how much gaming has changed, how much your hobbies have changed. Think about 10 years ago. That's how long it's been since they told us they were starting working on FF13 Versus. Think about that for a moment. That is a colossal period of time, especially when it comes to game development, which is a horribly cyclical process. I mean, seriously, think about that for a moment. Think about that. That's crazy. Yeah, I was not doing too great 10 years ago either. So, unpause. So, I bring this up, though, to try and emphasize this point. 10 years is a huge period of time. Huge. Especially from a personal perspective. And that's the point I'm trying to make. So they understand this. Credit for Square Enix. They understand this. They are shoving out every possible way to market this game they can. They've been pushing FF15 constantly. They have the movie that's coming out. They have the anime that's coming out. They have the VR experience that's coming out. They have the... I don't remember everything else. I know there's like 2 other things they're doing to push FF15. They are doing everything they can to announce it kind of as if it's a game that they're just pushing out, as if they're trying to push a franchise, which, let's be honest, they kind of are. And so credit where credit is due on that. But that doesn't actually make me... Yeah, it was also showcased at Square Enix's thing, at the Sony thing, and at the Xbox thing. They showcased it multiple times. So... Point being, they have been really... Yeah, that's another thing they've been doing, Dean. They've been really, really trying to push, hey, FF15, it's here. It's actually coming out. Please, God, buy our game. So I understand what they're doing with that. That being said, my thoughts on FF15, even after seeing all the new stuff during E3, have not changed at all. For me, it looks like a game, and I mean this sincerely, that looks like a game that looks like it would be very fun to play, but I have no idea if there's any meat on those bones. And nothing I've seen has convinced me that there is meat on those bones. Now, in the interest of fairness, that is not me speaking negatively of FF15. Yes, I did, Macon. That is not me speaking negatively about the game. In fact, they probably shouldn't actually be showing me the meat on the bones. That would kind of spoil stuff. It's the same thing Zelda did with Breath of the Wind, which we'll talk about later, by the way. So I get that. I'm with that. But it still leaves me with the problem of... I'm staring at really fancy gameplay and an uncertainty about whether or not there's actually going to be any real core Final Fantasy underneath that. I have no idea. I will say one other thing about FF15. There's something that they've said. So they've gotten some flack for having an all-male crew for the player characters, right? Let me go ahead and say that I disagree with that flack. I don't think there's anything wrong with them doing that. And my reasoning for saying that is their reason for why they gave for that. The reason was, and I actually kind of like this, men act differently when they are just with other men, statistically speaking, than they do if they are in a group of both men and women. And they want to have that sort of more men-with-men bonding experience amongst the player characters that is different than if they were also female characters who were part of the player characters, right? That reasoning is okay to me. I have no problem with that. Because it's true. Guys tend to act differently around guys than they do around people in general. And I like that. I like the fact that their reasoning isn't something vacuous and stupid, but actually something that is concrete and makes perfect sense, and is something that is part of the story they want to tell. Okay. I respect that. And yeah, Raskor, it is kind of a screwed up situation, isn't it? um, yes, they have had an all-female cast before. Nobody complained about that one. Yeah, I was gonna say, thank you, Lava Dude. I was literally just sitting here trying to think of a vacuous excuse. Ubisoft's excuse for why not having a female player per character was vacuous. It was stupid. It was ridiculous. It was also a flat-out lie. There were actual developers who actually worked at Ubisoft and the Montreal Group and other groups who said, no, that's a lie. And I could have told you that's a lie, even though I'm not actually an active game developer. No, that was freaking bullcrap, is what that was. So I like having a real excuse for something, a real, what I usually refer to as a reason, as opposed to an excuse. So, anyways, I had one other thing I wanted to talk about with FF15. Oh yeah, they added a pause button. Now, I actually like this. This is really easy to explain to a lot of my viewers. If you play Dragon Age Origins, then you understand the pause button if you've played that game. It's like, okay, hang on, pause, you're over here, target this, I want you to go over here, go! That's how the pause feature works in the RPG, in the action RPG format. It's good, actually. I actually like that functionality, because even if you never use it, that means people who aren't quite as good at reflexes or thinking quickly or acting quickly can play it a little bit easier, and actually be able to play the game at all, rather than watching it on YouTube. That's all I got on FF15. Next thing I want to talk about, going back to PC for a bit, is Gwent. So, first of all, let me go ahead and say that I have absolutely no problem with us having multiple card games. There is, in my blunt opinion, there's no denying that I think Hearthstone has rejuvenated a lot of the attention and interest in video game card games. Because for those who don't remember, there actually was a bit of a thing of video game card games back in the day, too. Back in the early 2000s, when Magic the Gathering was kind of going strong, and they tried a few video game card games, and they were good, and then they went away. I'll probably not be picking up Gwent myself, except I might. Let me explain why in just a second. Let me go ahead and say that at no point in time am I calling this a clone of Hearthstone. That's stupid. Anyone calling this a clone of Hearthstone is an idiot. Just gonna say that flat out. Gwent is actually a completely different game that has its own different style. It is actually being presented differently than it was in Witcher 3. A few changes were made to the functionality of it. Ooh, mushroom. In order to enable you to... in order to be able to play it a little bit better in this format, there is, of course, a multiplayer functionality to it. None of that interests me. I wasn't a huge fan of Gwent in Witcher 3, but I did enjoy what I played of it. For those of you curious, yes, the backseat run does include Gwent playthrough, play time, some playing of it. Here's the thing that I'm really interested in. So Gwent, the game that's coming out, the new PC game that's coming out, is a game that follows a story of Geralt. Now, let me explain what I mean by this, because this is something I feel is an underrepresented genre of gameplay. Imagine an RPG like Final Fantasy VI, and it's all of FF6. You know, all the characters are there, all the people are there, all the story is completely intact, right? But every time it goes, rather than going to the ATB system, you play a card game. Or you play a puzzle game. Or you jump into an FPS or something. It's sort of a form of genre shifting. Yeah, exactly, so on. It's a form of genre shifting. It means that rather than going with the typical RPG format, all of the gameplay, it's a form of complete gameplay and story segregation. So when Geralt is wandering around doing his stuff, he is actually interacting in character, in story, just da-da-da-da-da. And then all of a sudden, and over here we have gameplay which is 100% segregated from the story because you're playing a frickin' card game. You're playing Bazak, yeah. Actually, that's a good example, Django, and believe it or not, I like that idea. No, seriously. Again, partially because it's a little bit underrepresented. There are very, 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 very few games that do this total gameplay and story segregation thing. Because that's exactly what this is. It's like, alright, go over here, do the gameplay, and then we see the gameplay effect on the actual story. And I think that's a great example and a way to highlight that. Imagine if going through KOTOR 1, when you meet a boss, rather than instead it's like, all right, there's a boss, and then the game just kind of shifts away and you play a Pazok match, and then whoever wins the Pazok match actually wins the encounter against them, you know. See, in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not accurate, because in Yu-Gi-Oh! They actually play the card games in lore. That's why I keep using that word segregation. They're not actually playing cards in lore. Geralt is not actually playing Gwent in lore. He is actually fighting them with a sword in lore. We, the player, are playing Gwent to simulate him playing with the sword. Okay? And I really feel like this segregation is something people have a hard time accepting. Maybe that's one of the reasons why it's such an underdeveloped market. The only other game I can think of right off the top of my head that does something even close to this, even remotely, is actually Puzzle Quest, which I'm sure most of you have never even heard of. I like this idea. That idea alone might make this a game that I'm interested in, because there's so few games out there that do it. It's such a risky, such a brave thing to do. Nobody wants to do it. And even as I'm trying to describe it to you guys are pushing back against me and making fun of it, which just makes my point for me. So I'm sold on Gwent for that alone, even if I never play it. Next thing, Civilization 6. So for those of you not aware, this is actually the 21st anniversary of Civilization this year. Woo. Not exactly a big anniversary point. I only mention it because it was mentioned to me when they were discussing the Civ 6 stuff. Let me go ahead and say that I am extremely excited for Civ 6. Not just because it's a new Civ game, and let's be honest with ourselves, at least in my opinion, there's never been a bad Civ game that's actually got the name Civilization in the title. Hell, I haven't played the one on the SNES. But I like a lot of the features I'm seeing in the new Civilization in Civ 6. First of all, the most obvious thing, the most blatant thing, the thing they keep pushing is the cities. Rather than you having one tile that actually is your city, you've got your tile, which is like your capital building, basically, and then, okay, I want this tile next to it to be a residential district, and this tile over here to be a, where I put this wonder, and this tile over here will have some fortifications, and this tile over here. So in other words, we're actually going to be building our city on the tiles to bring the world a little bit more into the gameplay. Rather than just caring about what resources happen to be near your city, you care about actual positioning and location and where you can put what, which I actually like a lot. It adds another layer to the strategy of the game, which I'm always in favor of. And that's cool. I have nothing else to add to that. They also mention something that's also alongside that. So traders are actually going to be able to set up routes automatically early on, which I was like, I'm not sure I like that idea. However, he then mentioned that later on you can actually micromanage it as you will, and on the face of it, I'm actually okay with that. The idea that you can't custom design your roads in the ancient age makes sense to me, and yet by the time you reach the Industrial Revolution, you can actually build roads deliberately, which makes sense. So they also, one other thing they're doing that I've seen a lot of flack for Civ 6 is the graphics are going more, let's just call it what it is, cartoony. They're going much more stylized with the graphics. I agree with their reasoning for doing so, ignoring the fact that I tend to like stylized graphics in general. There's so much that's going to be on display with the new cities that cross half of the screen because of how large they can grow, that being able to visually distinguish there's the fortress, there's the holy place, there's the library. Being able to pick stuff out quickly and easily is important. And if you have everything look realistic, that's not happening. So stylized graphics enables you to be like, aha, it's right there, And I like that. They're also using the in-game engine to render a lot of stuff. So that's cool. As opposed to everything else. Hang on a second. I just got a text telling me Happy Father's Day. Super Mario RPG for life. Next game I want to talk about. I don't have much else to say about Civ 6. I'm super hyped for it. Hyped for it. And that hype will very quickly vanish, and then when it gets close to release, that will be this October, by the way, then I'll be much more hyped for it. So, that's everything on my first page. Woo, we're done with the first page. Second page. So, for those of you not aware, there's a game coming out called Prey. It's actually a reboot of the original Prey series, which I thought was actually strange. Looks alright. You know, I was fully expecting a Prey 2. When they mentioned the whole Prey thing, and there were a few leaks about that. The only thing I really have to mention newsworthy about Prey 2 is the fact that it's got Chris Avellone as one of the writers. I've had about 50 people message me about that this week too. But yes, Chris Avellone is doing some of the writing for Prey, and that makes me a lot more interested in it than I otherwise would have been. I admit I'm a little bit of a fan of his writing, because I've never seen him write anything I didn't like. However, yeah, I was actually about to say the exact same thing to Deacon. We've kind of had a absence of the Fear-style gameplay, and so this looks like a game that's trying to fill that particular void. You know, that sort of semi-explorative, semi-combat, pseudo-RPG, horror FPS gameplay. And I'm with that. I unfortunately don't have a lot to share with you about actual gameplay mechanics. I'm sorry, guys. I actually did a little looking into it. I didn't find much, like, at all. Thank you, Skype. So, yeah, I'm actually hoping it either ties into the lore like Doom 4 did, which would be a good way to do it, or re-represents it in a good way. I'm okay with the reimagining. I've always said that. So, I do kind of... So, what Aureus said, he's not sure why they calls it Prey. I just kind of gave my hope for why I'm okay with them theoretically calling it Prey. If, you know, they call back to the original, or if they reimagine it, or do something with it, I'm okay with that idea. Oh, wow. Yeah, no kidding, Django. Yeah, no, to make my statement clear, by the way, when I say it's kind of pseudo-RPG-ish, there is progression and customization, but there's not really an RPG format to it, so... To clarify that a little bit. Now, I don't want to talk about Paper Mario yet. I've got some Nintendo stuff I'm saving for the end, because it's at the bottom of my list. That's the only reason. So, shrug. I don't actually have much else to talk about that one. Let's talk about one I know at least some of my viewers are interested in. Dawn of War 3. Come on, tell me some of you are interested in this. Give me something. Give me something. Anything. Nothing? I'm dying here. There's no one here. I know, I'm just waiting for the Twitch delay. I really wish that, like, I could get rid of this Twitch delay. I understand the reality of it. I really do. If I was a partner, I'd actually have better Twitch delay because I would get higher priority on their side of the bandwidth. Oh, hey. Responses have come in. Woo, Dawn of War 3. Whoa. So I've been a big fan of the Dawn of War series since I was accidentally introduced to it. So that's awesome. Dawn of War 3, let me just go ahead and say this. I actually liked what I saw. The very, very first thing I saw in Dawn of War 3, my very first reaction, and you could ask the people who are in chat with me when this was going live, my very first reaction was, it looks like they're taking Dawn of War 2's overall gameplay style and applying it to a whole army rather than a squad. A merger of Dawn of War 1 and 2's gameplay. And I like that. I want to actually be able to command an army, but I want something more than, well, Dawn of War 1. Dawn of War 1's a little out of date at this point in time, and I want something more than that. Now, let's go ahead and address some of the concerns. Django, in particular, mentioned several concerns, and this is a valid concern. He was worried that it was going to be too MOBA-like, and that they were going to get rid of... Go ahead, Lava. They were going to get rid of white damage. Now, let me explain just a little bit what I mean about white damage. White damage is auto-attacking. You know, if I select an enemy... I select a guy. Oh, God, Evans, don't do it. Don't open the... Give me a minute, okay? I'll talk about that next, just for you. But let me finish talking about that yet. So, I made a note just to skip ahead to that. So, If I select a unit and auto attack and go in a direction, no ability use, then what happens is that's white damage. If I have an ability that drops a bomb on a spot, that's yellow damage. Now, the balancing between white and yellow damage is a big part of gameplay design. I don't want to go too much in depth into right now. Generally, yellow damage is going to be better than white damage in terms of its functionality, but it's always either got a resource cost or a cooldown or something that prevents you from just doing yellow damage. Now, I've talked before about the idea of being able to do a game that is pure yellow damage. WildStar was like one step away from being a pure yellow damage game. In fact, in WildStar, the player characters do not do white damage at all. They just do yellow damage. And I liked that. Unfortunately, the bosses and enemies of WildStar do white damage, and I feel that was one of its biggest flaws. But I mention this because in an RTS, the vast majority of damage is white damage. It's very rare. You know, the yellow damage is the big cooldown stuff usually, in most RTS games in general. I was on board with the idea of it being basically pure yellow damage until I started thinking about it, and I realized that that would only work if we were still squad-based. Or if this was like an XCOM style thing, with actual turn-based thing. A full-time RTS with multiple units to use, the only way yellow damage is going to work there is if the yellow damages are on auto attack, if they have the right-click thing from Warcraft 3. I know some of you know what I mean by that. And if at that point, that might as well just become the new white damage. You understand? So the more I thought about it, the more I actually pulled away from that idea and decided that shouldn't actually be what they go with. However, I did some digging into this, partially because of Django. He wanted me to really look into this. I wanted to look into this, and it turns out we were kind of deceived by the trailers. So in the trailers, they're like, yellow damage, yellow damage, yellow damage, yellow damage. That's not actually how it works. If you pay attention to the trailer, it's pretty clear. But I actually watched some solid gameplay of the game, too, which was done not on the E3 floor. And I feel like I linked the video earlier. I'm not going to show it to you now. It's like a 20-minute video. And they're not yellow damage, yellow damage, yellow. It's more like, it's exactly what we were expecting it. You've got like a yellow damage ability that has like a 30-second cooldown, and the rest of the time you do white damage, which is exactly what it should be for an RTS format. It shouldn't be a super long cooldown. 2 minutes is way on the outside of that, but it still is not too short, too. Again, as Takoida points out, if you have nothing but yellow abilities you have to manage constantly and no autocast, then you have just nothing, and I mean nothing but a focus on micro. And that's going to hurt a lot of the strategy of a game like that, especially if you have a full army rather than a squad. Micro combat better fits turn-based or squad, in my opinion. So, all that having been said, yes, I am looking forward to Dawn of War 3. Unfortunately, there are no Titans in Dawn of War 3. Sadness. Now, I know any of you lore hounds are saying, well, what's the difference between a Titan and a Knight? And honestly, the difference between the smallest Titan and the biggest Knight is just kind of... Nevertheless, we have Knights that are available in Dawn of War 3, which is awesome in general. We also have this system, so this will be familiar to anyone who's actually played the tabletop Warhammer 40k. You have the ability, you have a set amount of, I forget what they call it, it's like elite points, I want to say, that you start off with, and that's like your pool that you can choose units from. Now, from what I understood, and this was not very well explained, but from what I understood, this is not the pool you decide your army from, this is the pool you decide your mega units from. If you want to send out a hero unit, or a knight, or, you know, some kind of vehicle or whatever, that is what this pool enables you to determine. Just those things, not the actual army units themselves. They really didn't actually go a lot of in-depth into how exactly you produce your actual army units on the field, if there's base construction like there's in Dawn of War 1, or if there's deployment like there are in some other RTSs. I don't actually know. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on Dawn of War 3. I am excited for it. I will be picking it up, and I will be doing an exploration on that. That's, what, 2 games so far I'll be doing an exploration on? I think. Actually, so hang on. We're doing an exploration on Mount and Blade, Tyranny, Turing Test, Civ 6, and Dawn of War 3. So I guess we're actually up to 5 games added to my exploration list. As an aside, I actually skipped over a game, but that's because I want to talk about it later. It's just, I need to write it on this list. Just make sure I have that note there. Let's move on to the next game. Ubisoft has a brand new IP. Now, let me go ahead and get this out of the way here real quick. As I've said before, I want to get this out on a public statement. I want to make this as a public statement. Hang on, British Twitch, before I jump forward. Oh, right. I was asked to talk about Star Trek VR, too. Other than EA, I don't think I saw any bad presentations at E3 this year, which is actually quite impressive. Usually there's, you know, I mean, we've seen E3 for years. We've seen how terrible and just terrible E3 can get. And I don't think, even EA's was not a bad presentation. It was just an empty, boring mess of pointless stupid. So other than EA, I felt like Bethesda had a good presentation. The showcasing of Dishonored 3 looks great. I feel Microsoft had a good presentation. There was some real enthusiasm there. Even though I made fun of it constantly, Xbox One and Windows 10 exclusive. Even though I made fun of it constantly, it was still a good presentation. Ubisoft, also a good presentation. Even though they started with that ridiculous dance number, they at least owned up to it. The PC conference, good presentation again. Lot of gameplay of that. Sony's conference was actually amazingly presented. I want to talk about the difference between Sony and Nintendo later. And of course, Nintendo's conference, if you could call it that, was pretty well presented. Now you'll notice I'm not listing Square Enix in this list because their presentation was god-awful. But I'll talk about that later too. I was asked to talk about Star Trek VR next, so that's what we're talking about next. I said this in chat, but I want to get this out there on video to save it for the world. Well, yes, I know, Zoan, thank you. There are people who would argue there's not that much of a difference between the two. I have heard that argument before. I'm sure you have too. Let's talk about Star Trek VR and why I don't like VR. Okay? A lot of people say VR is just a gimmick. And I agree with that statement. I think VR is the latest motion control. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are being all, oh my god, you know, jump into it and then immediately abandon it. You know, when was the last time you heard anything about the PlayStation Move or the Kinect, for that matter, you know? I think this is just the latest gimmick that people are jumping on board with. If motion controls don't sell you, how about that whole 3D TV thing that they tried pushing for about a year and then abandoned, you know? Now, let me go ahead and clarify my statement a little bit. So first of all, VR has some very serious issues that cannot be solved, basically, unless it becomes real VR, unless it's actually a holodeck, unless we get to that step, which is possible. But right now, VR will not really appeal to certain types of people. Because, first of all, it's not actually immersive. For the record, yes, I have used VR. No, I don't remember which device. I've been asked that. I don't recall. Right now, yeah, exactly, Deacon. VR is really in its infancy. That's one of the reasons... Okay, let me go ahead and answer what Deacon said. One of the reasons I'm so pissed off about all this VR stuff is VR is in its infancy. You know what VR is right now? This is VR right now. Oh, wow, look, I can look around and the camera follows my overall patterns. That's so cool. That's it. That's really it. VR is not actually there yet. It's... What they need is to really shove more money into it and actually develop the technology more so it's something closer to real VR and not try to push it out there constantly right now. Now, I know what you're saying. Yes, I know. They need money to push the content, and that means... Or they need money to develop it, and that means pushing the content. And that's a whole other topic I don't actually want to go into. It's also expensive. Yeah, let's add that. It is actually very expensive, relatively speaking, for such a small hobby. However... moving along, let me go ahead and give my big complaints about VR. First of all, my biggest complaint about VR by far is the fact that VR is pulling away from other development right now. It's the same complaint I had about a lot of companies a few years ago who were sinking all sorts of money into mobile gaming, right? And that complaint was the fact that the companies were looking at mobile gaming and say, well, this is just better than making real games. And there were companies out there who stopped making games and started focusing on just making mobile games. And we're seeing the same thing with VR stuff. There is stuff coming out on the VR that is not coming out elsewhere, that is taking away time and development away from other things. And that is something that upsets me. I will admit that is a personal complaint, not a professional complaint. Okay, so let's distinguish those. I personally wish they were pushing something else like, oh, I don't know, AR. Augmented reality is something I feel has a real genuine future and a lot of potential for the gaming industry, and I mean that sincerely. Yeah, there's rumors about that with the NX too, Deacon. Augmented reality. Some people have asked me what is AR. AR is, and AR's been out since the 3DS came out. AR is when you project digital stuff onto real images, real stuff. So, like for example, you're looking through your. Well, I'll actually pull up my 3DS. You're looking through your 3DS, and you see. You can actually have something displayed there on the ground. You can interact with it through the game, and it's using the camera to get most of the image, and then it's actually got the digitally presented thing down there. Now, I personally think AR has a lot of potential, and I am hopeful to try out Pokemon Go, which is the first real AR game we've ever had of any significance, when it comes out later this year. I think AR has real potential to go somewhere. Now, in fairness, VR also has real potential to go somewhere. But my point is no one's pushing AR. Everyone's pushing VR. And that irritates me. But again, that's a personal complaint. Next thing about VR that upsets me personally, and again, I mentioned that VR has some problems that cannot be solved. I can't do VR. After I played for a little bit, I had to actually go lay down. This is not a complaint. I had to lay down. I had a big headache, and I was very nauseous, and having, I was doing that, I'm sure all of you had that moment where you're like, you're managing your breath and trying really hard to stay calm, trying really hard not to throw up. That's where I was at. It wrecked me. And I am also not the only person I know who has had that problem. What I say the reason I say this is a problem that can't be solved is because it's the nature of how VR works right now that causes that. Like, there's no fixing that until we have moved on to the next step of VR, till we have something that actually has some more virtual reality other than some goggles on your head, So there are certain people that's simply not going to ever work for. Like, you're never going to be able to sell me on a VR game until they have moved on to a new type of development other than that, because I'm not willing to go play Star Trek VR and then go lay down for like an hour afterwards in order to recover from it. I'm not that interested in playing an Artemis Bridge simulator, And again, this is just a problem that at the moment doesn't actually have a solution. The only way to solve this is for them to move on to the next overall step past the goggles with VR. So again, these are my overall complaints with VR. I have spit vitriol at VR before, and I hope this partially explains why this is. But there's one last complaint I have about VR, and this is kind of a combination of the previous two. So they're coming out with Star Trek VR. You actually sit there. It's multiplayer. You got different people on the different consoles, and you're playing on the bridge of a starship, doing starship stuff. It's Artemis Bridge Simulator, okay? For those of you who know what that is. And yes, this is appropriate music for this song, for this. And it looks kind of neat, actually. Legitimately, it looks like a fun little party game. It looks like the kind of thing that I would play once or twice with my friends for kicks. So there's the positivity. Here's the negativity. First of all, dumping the kind of money it would take in order to make that happen with me and my friends who'd be interested would be colossal. That would be a lot of money. Second problem, it's VR. So I can't do that even if I wanted to. Even if I won the lottery tomorrow and got friends interested, I still couldn't do it because it would just, the motion sickness and the headache problem, right? And this upsets me because it means that is now a game I will never play. And it's not the only game like that, and it won't be the only game like that. And this is my concern for the future, that there will be other games developed that actually look interesting, that actually look like something I actually want to play, and that's not happening because it's developed solely for VR. Now, what Deacon says is something else I'm curious at, personally. I'm very, very curious of the long-term effects of VR, which of course we have no idea of and no way to even guess at. people only very recently started discovering why acetaminophen is bad for you. Within the last, like, decade or so, we've really started to understand just how horribly that screws up your body, right? You know, long-term effects are always a concern for new technologies, and unfortunately, there's usually not really any ways to study those long-term effects without just plain old exposing people to them, you know? Yeah. Now, if we ever get to the point... Yeah, you know what? Darkrai brings up a good point. This is another reason why I call it a gimmick. Let's go ahead and bring up the 3DS 3D mechanic, okay? Let me just go ahead and say flat out, I think the 3D mechanic on the 3DS is a gimmick. Now, I love my 3DS. I've played the crap hell out of this game, or out of this system, and I have never even once regretted its purchase. However, this 3D bar over here is optional. I don't play games with 3D on. Like, I've done that occasionally, and I've done that for fun every now and again. But for the most part, this knob is all the way down to the bottom, because it's optional. In other words, this new Star Trek game, for example, this option doesn't exist. There is no non-VR version of the Star Trek game. There's no non-VR of the first-person experience with FF15 and so forth. And so, you know, I'm not going to go down to the whole list. So all these games that are developed solely for VR are removing that option from me. So, yeah. Anywho, so these are my talks about the Star Trek VR. Yeah. What was the... Someone else asked something. Hang on, scroll up a bit. Someone else asked something about this. British Twitch. Okay, so I mentioned the Ubisoft thing, so I'll go ahead and skip ahead in my notes quite a bit to the South Park thing. Let me just go say I'm already sold on the new South Park game. Flat out. I haven't even played Stick of Truth. I'm still already sold on the new one. The new South Park game that they showed, it did something very rare. It made me genuinely laugh. Like, at several points during the presentation, it actually just made me laugh out loud at the jokes they were doing. The big one, the absolute biggest one, the one that actually killed me, was, it's like, let me tell you this terrible backstory. And so Cartman is narrating the backstory of the player character. And the player character is bouncing, and it's playable. You can play, and so Cartman's like, and then he went out to the door. But you don't have to, because you're playing. So he went over and starts doing some other stuff. And Cartman, after a bit, is like, I said you went out to the door! Yes, basically. It looks like it's still all of the quality that the first game had. Obviously, I've played a little bit of the first game. I just haven't beaten it. So it looks like it still has all of the same quality of the first game, and it looks like, and again, it genuinely made me laugh. And it's adding a few more aspects to the combat, which I like. The grid and the not quite, but pseudo XCOM-y grid-based, turn-based combat, which I am in favor of. I like that kind of combat in general. So yeah, definitely sold on that. I saw a snark from Total Biscuit, where he said that this, I can't remember the fractured however whole is how I'm going to say the name of that. That how he said that this new South Park game actually had more tactical combat than the previous game, which was listed as a tactical combat game and had none. It was an amusing snark. I just wanted to repeat it there. Yes, Dakota. I use XCOM because most people aren't fully aware of, like, say, Final Fantasy Tactics or Fire Emblem or other grid-based, turn-based combat games. So, don't actually have much else to talk about. Let's talk about now. So now, getting forward to the Ubisoft thing I mentioned. Ubisoft has a new IP. Now, here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with trying out a new IP. What there is something wrong with is trying to say it's a brand new concept. Yeah, that's the one. Thank you, British Twitch. It's like trying to say that there's this whole new idea. Like no one's ever done an SSX game before. And that was my only complaint with the new IP. What do they call it? Shoot, I didn't write down the name. Ah! I forgot to write down the name of the new Ubisoft game. That's just... I'm terrible. Yeah, what's it called? What's it called? Steep! That's what it's called. Steep. There we go. Roku almost got there before I did. Oops, looks like some people did get there before. Steep is the name of the game. Now, so let me just go ahead and say the whole buzzword, oh, it's a new concept, oh, no one's ever done this before, that actually irritated me. And my very first reaction was, I've played this game before. And actually, this is so sad. Hey, Brookhampton. This is so sad because I actually legitimately thought for a moment that Ubisoft actually was the company that pushed out SSX. They're not. It's an EA title. But I was like, hang on, haven't they already done this before? That was my first reaction to that. Now, all snarking aside and the terrible presentation aside, let me just say that Steep actually looks pretty fun. It looks like a little bit more, of a sort of an open world SX. Rather than having just the tracks, you actually have an entire area and you can go up and start a track. It's a tiny variation on SSX. However, I actually enjoyed the latest SSX. 2012, I want to say, was the latest one. It was the one on the PS3 is the one I played. It was actually pretty fun. I actually enjoyed that. So the idea of being able to roam around and be like, okay, I want to go up there. Then we're going to go to this spot and try out this particular thing. Okay, I'm on board with that. I'm probably not going to buy it, to be completely honest with you. That sounds like, at best, a sale buy. But at the very least, I am still moderately interested in it. I will say this. Total Biscuit had this big snark about open world. Or no, it wasn't. It was Jim Sterling, actually. Excuse me, getting them confused. Jim Sterling had this big snark about how there's only one Ubisoft game. They all have the same type of gameplay at this point. You know, the Far Cry style of gameplay, and it's kind of hard to argue against that statement. Or maybe it was Yahtzee. God, they're all blurring together for me now. I'm really tired. I have to admit that's a valid complaint. The fact that there's basically the Ubisoft game at this point. I don't actually know, Deacon. And yeah, that is an important question. I agree. So yeah, I don't know. The Ubisoft game, the typical Ubisoft game thing, is a thing. It is absolutely a concern. It is absolutely something that I can see people who are legitimately getting tired of. You know, having genre fatigue, basically. And it doesn't help that a lot of their games have slowly been blurring the lines between each other to the point where the new Watch Dogs, for example, just to name an example, has a few few elements from the new Far Cry, which has a few elements from and the new Assassin's Creed, and so forth and so on. So they're just kind of starting to blur a little bit together. I don't know, Ventures, legitimately. I will admit that doesn't bother me personally, but I do get the complaint. I don't want to sound derogatory towards the complaint. I guess this is as good a time as any to talk about the new Watch Dogs. So let me just go ahead and say that overall, I don't think the last Watch Dogs was a net negative. I think it suffered some very serious issues because of the marketing department, basically. Because the marketing department freaking failed, overhyped the hell out of the game, and came out with 50 different release versions, and screwed up everything in the universe. And that was, a mistake. And I also, yeah, no kidding, Oreos. I also think that they didn't really showcase the story the way it should have been. I also think they're making a mistake in not having Watch Dogs 2 be about the fox. However, I was still, even walking into it, I was like, okay, I'm at least moderately interested in Watch Dogs 2. And then they showed the actual gameplay, and I was just kind of like, well, it's Watch Dogs 1 with the addition of the drones. I am hopeful, with an asterisk here, that they actually might have some additional hacking gameplay, basically. Like, that's kind of... Yes, I do, Darker. That's kind of, like, my hope. I'm not actually sold or against Watch Dogs 2 yet. They didn't show us anything, really. They showed us the fact that you now have drones in addition to the other, tidbits that you had previously in Watch Dogs 1. And for some reason, the player character is basically another Ubisoft player character, someone who is... So it made sense for me that the fox in the first Watch Dogs actually had skill in... I don't think so, Darker. Actually had skill in everything. Like, he was skilled in psychological manipulation. He was skilled in fighting. He was skilled in arms. He was skilled in driving and flying. He was skilled in sort of, in hacking. It was actually mentioned several times in the first Watch Dogs. He actually was not that good of a hacker. He had programs that he used that were built for him by other people to hack. And he would have to hire other people to do most of his actual hacking work. And I actually liked that. Because, again, he was basically Batman. It was an origin story for a superhero. I know I've said this 1,000 times, but it really does explain so much of the first Watch Dogs, gameplay and story-wise. So I was hopeful to see the continuation of that. Having some random Joe Schmo who was also good at gameplay, who is also good at fighting and shooting and driving and hacking and jumping from building to building and all that fun stuff, that completely takes me out of that. And that's probably my biggest negative overall, is the fact that we're following some new guy who just randomly also happens to have all those same talents without any of the actual reasoning behind it. So, Watch Dogs 2. The new FIFA has a single-player story campaign. Let me just go ahead and say that I am hugely in favor of that. I really am. I really like the idea of not just having a single-player campaign, but actually having a story mode, a character who you are following his story throughout the course of his career as a football player. I like that. I do actually like that idea. It's one of the few things that really got my attention about it. And, yeah. Yes, Lava, you're very weird. Except you're not, apparently, according to porn. I know this is not exactly a brand new concept when it comes to sports games. There are a couple of other sports games out there that have done this kind of a concept. But I think it's a not commonly done concept. And I think it's something that's kind of brave and risky and new to try. And so I'm automatically on board with it just because it's trying something new. Now, of course, I will probably not pick it up because I personally am not that interested in playing a footballer's career as he tries to make his way into Manchester United or whatever. However, I still applaud them for the effort. That's actually all I have to talk about the new FIFA. What's my next note here? My next note's about EA. So I kind of already gave across the big point, the fact that EA's entire presentation was devoid of anything, devoid of interest, devoid of excitement, devoid of like early on. If you were watching if you've seen my E3 video on EA's presentation, my overall approach was I was just kind of having fun making fun of it early on, and by the end of it, I was so bored. I was so tired. I was just looking at it like I ran out of things to make fun of. They were making fun of themselves. It was terrible. And but I mentioned this with regards to this in particular because I know everyone wants to know about Mass Effect Andromeda, but unfortunately all we really know new about Mass Effect Andromeda is information that contradicts itself. Yes, really, they've actually announced things that contradict other things they've announced. I'm not even going to bring up the list. And the fact that the main character is going to be Ryder instead of Shepard, which, okay, credit where credit is due. You know, they did their research on that one. Yeah. So that's kind of neat. I am still going to be playing Andromeda when it goes live. I am still going to be streaming it in a premiere run. I hope you guys will join me with that. But I got to be completely blunt. The only reason I'm actually going to be doing that is for the show. If it was not for the show, I would not be picking up Andromeda when it comes out. So that's pretty much summarizes my thoughts on that. They also showcased several Star Wars games. Sort of. Not really. Kind of. And several of them were VR only. I'll just go ahead and turn it on. I'm sure everyone's seen the text thing by now. Thank you, Jengies. So yeah, I'm just kind of like, yep. The new Star Wars stuff, everything they showcased was just kind of very little interest. In fact, I'll go ahead and say no interest. And all of the Star Wars stuff they showed. One of the things that really just struck me as hilarious is one of the things that they showcased for this. You're gonna laugh. Was this new Star Wars mobile game? Now, automatically, I'm like, ugh, really? But this year, for the first year, I was actually really amused by this more than ever before. Because I've actually played this mobile game. I actually tried it out myself. And it's actually not loading, because it's taking too long. Sorry, guys. Anyways, there's a Star Wars mobile game that's already out. That's been out for a while. That they're talking about it like it's this brand new thing. And, it's not good. I actually uninstalled it. Even by mobile game standards, it's not good. It's terrible. I mean, everything I saw about their Star Wars presentations was just, that's all you've got? Really? You are the only publisher right now who actually has the rights to make Star Wars games, and this is what you're doing with it? Was basically my thoughts. They're not trying anything new. They're not trying anything interesting. They're not trying anything exciting. They're not trying anything fun. We've got a new mobile game, a new VR game, and a bunch of stuff that was so irrelevant that I actually don't remember it. And I didn't bother to write it down. That's not true. I wrote down terrible stuff. It's actually my specific note right here. Anyways, moving on. Skyrim Remastered. Now, my first reaction to Skyrim Remastered was total shock at the variance in the graphics. Not really, Aureus. I'm going to talk about Sony when I talk about Nintendo, because I feel it's relevant there. I'll make another note just to remind myself. Yes, I have played the Kingdom Hearts mobile game. I don't like it either. I am seriously thinking about uninstalling it. So, Skyrim Remastered, I'm okay with it. I really wish they would do a proper remake of other games. And yes, I'm going to talk about the Morrowind thing. What's the name of the guy who said the terrible quote about Morrowind? I didn't write down his name, and I meant to. Anyway, so let's talk about Skyrim Remastered. So I'm on board with it because I'm on board with reduction of exclusivity. I'm on board with the fact that people who own a PS4 or an Xbone who don't have a PC, who don't have a previous system, would like to be able to play Skyrim. I'm okay with that. So, yeah. Was it Hines who said that? Terrible, terrible quote? I don't remember. The other thing... hang on, I need to get back against my heating pad. My back is giving me issues here. There we go. Yeah, the fact that if it was Peter Hines, that is the gentleman. God, I hate Peter Hines. I've always hated Peter Hines. So I'm okay with it. They're basically just doing a little bit of a graphics overhaul and porting it to the PS4 and the Xbone. So again, I'm okay with that. That doesn't actually bother me all that much. PC players are getting the remastered version for free, which is good. If we weren't, that would be extremely aggravating. Supposedly, old mods will still work on the new version. Supposedly, the new version will add a couple of graphical changes, which mod players can use. Of course, everyone in the world has said that the Skyrim Remastered is just like, okay, I already have a PC, I've already had access to mods to do this, who gives a damn? But I am still in favor of this overall because there are people who don't have access to those mods, who don't know the right mods to get, who can now get a decent graphical experience who couldn't before. And again, free update. If it wasn't for that free update part, I would be much more upset about Skyrim Remastered. Now let's talk about Peter Hines. So, one of the questions I was asked is, why aren't you doing something with one of the older games, notably Morrowind? Peter Hines said, and I quote, to take Morrowind and then completely rebuild it, it was an Xbox campaign. To completely rebuild it, to be relevant today, that's pretty massive amount of work. You go back and look at it. Do you remember the dialogue system? Do you remember what it was like talking to someone and scrolling through long lists of questions? You put that out for someone that just finished Skyrim, they're going to be like, what the hell? That is a direct quote from Peter Hines. So let me go ahead and talk about Peter Hines here, shall we? First of all, he's a moron. This is not new. Peter Hines has been an idiot many times before. Now, the funny thing is, he flat out said, now this amuses me, I'm not interested in doing... You can't do a remaster of Morrowind. You would have to do a proper remake of Morrowind. That is actually what he said. He didn't say it in those words, but that is what he was saying. To which I say, yeah, that's the frickin' point. We want a proper remake of Morrowind. We don't want you to touch up the graphics of the game. We did that with mods. There are mods out there that touch up the graphics, that touch up the UE. We actually want a proper remake of Morrowind. The fact that he so dismissively calls it an Xbox game is ridiculous. And the fact that he... And then he uses the fact that a proper remake... So let's go ahead. So Raskor points out the reality, and I talked about this while we were discussing this in chat. A proper remake is basically making a new game minus about 10%. You know, because you already have an existing game, story and dialogue and stuff that already exists. You know, you don't have to remake everything. However, the other 90% of doing a proper remake is basically making a new game. New engine, new graphics, new strings, new scripts, all that stuff. The only thing you really have from the original is like the dialogue and the story concepts and things you can base the art design off of, right? And I've said this before, making a proper remake is basically making a new game. I've discussed this topic at length. I've discussed that one of the reasons why it's understandable why we have so few proper remakes. I also am extremely in favor of proper remakes. I am genuinely in favor of proper remakes when applicable. It is worth noting that the difference between a proper remake and a remaster is monumental. Like, I can't even possibly discuss how huge the difference is between a proper remake and a remaster. A remaster is like touching up the graphics, maybe, and then porting it to a new system. A remaster is basically a fancy word for a port, and I wish they would just call it that, because that's what I call it, and that is what it actually is. It's a port. This new Skyrim Remastered, it's a port of Skyrim with a few touching ups to it, and that's it. Both, Raskor, but I don't want to get into that topic right now. So my point is, Peter Hines is a frickin' idiot for his dismissiveness and for his derogatory tone, and for the fact that he himself uses, oh, well, we'd have to do this thing you guys want, and that's why we're not doing this thing you guys want. That's his argument. He can go screw himself. Moving on. And I don't want to get into the proper remake, new IP argument right here. But all I'm going to say, and this is statistically provable, every proper remake that's ever been made has sold very well. Because a proper remake brings back old fans who want to enjoy the game again, brings in new fans who either never had the chance or opportunity or interest to play the old game, and brings in people who were slightly interested in the old game, but were pushed away because of, you know, old graphics or old UE or old concepts. Every proper remake that has ever been made has sold, and sold well. Now, that's why I keep differentiating. Hey, Pro. That's why I keep differentiating between proper remake and remaster. A port, in other words. Because a proper remake does take real effort. It takes real effort and real time and real money. A port does not. Anyways, so that's my thoughts on Peter Hines and Skyrim Remastered. Let's talk about Fallout 4. I'm sure some of you are looking forward to this. So I've been pushed in... how do I put this? I have been a huge victim of pendulum theory when it comes to Fallout 4. Because I have heard such constant, universal hatred of Fallout 4 that I have been more positively inclined towards it than I probably should be. So, yeah, thank you, Case, now for making my point for me. So, I have been very, very looking at Fallout 4 better than I otherwise would be. There's several things I genuinely like about Fallout 4. I really like the stronger character emphasis. I like the writing and dialogue of the characters. I like the way that the world itself feels a lot more like a city, like a world, than I've ever felt in any Fallout game before, including San Francisco back in Fallout 2. It's the closest I've ever felt to actually feeling like I was in a city. New Vegas never gave me that impression. In New Vegas. And there are some significant negatives I have when it comes to Fallout 4. Quite a few, actually. I do still think Fallout 4 was a net positive overall. Here's where we're talking about. Here's where we're coming into this. So, one thing that Bethesda has literally always done since Morrowind is they make the main game. The main game has some issues. And then they make the expansions, or DLCs, or whatever you want to call it, and those either not only fix the issues, but are better in every way. You know, the whole Mournhold thing from Morrowind. The Shivering Isles from Oblivion. Dragonborn and the vampire one, whose name Dusk something, in Skyrim. Fallout 3 is actually probably my favorite example of this. Now, so I've actually admitted freely, even though I actually really like Fallout 3, and yes, I've gotten blasted for that too, feel free. Toss the hate on, it's okay. I understand, I respect your opinion. I genuinely like Fallout 3. However, I will freely admit that if Fallout 3 was without its DLCs, that like would go down considerably, because Point Lookout and the Pit and Broken Steel, Dawnguard, thank you, are good things. I like Pit, I like Point Lookout, I like Broken Steel. I even like the frickin' Mothership Zeta to a point. It has its flaws. So I really love... So Bethesda has consistently, over the years, been like, here's the great DLC for the base game, which is either okay or whatever. You know, the DLC has been consistently been better than the main game. That's been their big selling point for forever. So one of the things I kept talking about in Fallout 4 over and over and over and over is about an hour and a half, okay? In Fallout 4 is... You know, all these issues I have with Fallout 4, my biggest thing is I'm looking forward to the DLC. And I made the exact same point that I just made. So, they are releasing 2 DLCs of significance. Ever. Now, I know people are going to argue technicalities. And let me remind you, if you have to argue a technicality, you're wrong. If you have to argue it technically, you're wrong. They're releasing 2 DLCs. There's the one, which was the I can't remember the name of it. It's like the harbor something some kind of water related DLC. I'm sorry, forgive me for not actually remembering what it's called. But that's it. That's an actual DLC that they're releasing. And then they're releasing... Oh, you can ask questions all you want, Tigzar. Far Harbor, thank you, Far Harbor is the one, and by all accounts, Far Harbor is good. And so when I saw Far Harbor, and everyone I knew who had played it said it was good stuff and better than the main game, my reaction was basically just to nod. Yep. Far Harbor is exactly what I was expecting, and we're going to get more DLC for the future, and it'll be awesome. And then they announced the next few chunks of DLC, which is the Nuka-Cola place, the amusement center, and then one that will enable you to craft stuff, and then one that enables you to make your own shelter, your own vault, excuse me, wrong term. And I'm like, okay, waiting for the next big story DLC. Oh, that's the last, that's it, that's the last Fallout 4 thing they're coming out with. What? That was legitimately my reaction when I first found that out, that was the last planned DLC for Fallout 4. In fact, I feel like I'm having a bit of deja vu. Because I actually remember having this exact same reaction back when Skyrim was pushing their things. Right? In other words, Skyrim had Dawnguard, which is good, and Dragonborn, which is good, and then they're done. They cut it off. And I was just sitting there, and I was basically doing the same. I was just waiting for the extra DLC to come out. I was waiting for the war. I was waiting for the Civil War, or not the Civil War, excuse me, the War against the Thalmor DLC, which the whole game had hyped up, and had basically laid the foundations for, and then chopped off. Now, Hearthfire doesn't count for this purpose. Hearthfire was not a major story deal. It was not an expansion. Let's use our terminology correctly. Hearthfire was not an expansion. Whether it was good or not is irrelevant. I do think Hearthfire was good, personally. But it was not an expansion. Dawnguard was an expansion. Dragonborn was an expansion. That was it. And then they cut it off. Nothing else. I had the exact same reaction back then. Fallout 4, we got Far Harbor. And we don't know if there's anything else. Far Harbor would qualify as an expansion. It is entirely possible that Far Harbor will be our only expansion in Fallout 4. It is possible Nuka World will not be an expansion. It'll just be a DLC. You see my problem here? Now, it is worth noting they've only done 2 expansions per game, as Tigzar points out, so let's be honest with ourselves here. Let's go ahead and be legit. There were 2 expansions for Morrowind, and there were 2 expansions for Oblivion. There were quite a few for Fallout 3, which is, but that makes Fallout 3 the exception, not the rule. And then we go back to 2 for Skyrim, and maybe a second one for Fallout 4. We're not actually sure yet if there's going to be a second expansion in Fallout 4. Some people think Nuka World will be. That's the second one I referenced earlier. I don't actually know. I won't know until it comes out. So, yeah. I think I've probably already gotten across my opinion in the way I've been talking for the last 10 minutes as we've been discussing this matter. And again, that initial reaction, what? That's it? I will freely admit, for the first time, you know, I know lots of people love to hate on Fallout. That's fine, go hate on it. Like I said, I respect your opinion. But for me, this is the first time I'm legitimately upset at Bethesda for this. For Fallout specifically, I should clarify. This is the first time I'm actually upset about Fallout. The fact that they're just kind of dropping it. And we already know they're working on some new big IP. And there's already a lot of hints that the new big IP is Elder Scrolls 6. Moving on. Let's talk about For Honor. So, For Honor! I don't have... Beard Guy, or Cane Guy, or whatever you want to call him, is awesome. I actually was yelled at for the fact that I actually liked Cane Guy's presentation. I stand by my statement. I like Cane Guy's presentation. He was a lot more genuine, and frankly, I'm more interested in seeing genuine than I am seeing... I personally think that every game coming out there should include DLC. And I think, personally, that you, the fans, are the people who should be talking about our new DLC. I hate that crap. It's fake and artificial, and I hate it. Now, this is me, the person, speaking. But I absolutely loathe it when someone gets up on stage and it is this fake artificial robot and is trying desperately to try and show something terrible. I would rather have someone get up there and say, "Yeah, I can't wait for you guys to play this game. For Honor has you going against terrible demons and well, actually no demons, terrible beasts and monsters, and you will go and you will conquer all that stand in your path." I'd rather have that 10 times out of 10 than the robot. Now, there's something I'd want more than that, but regardless. By the way, for those of you who are watching the E3 stuff, yes, the hands counter went through the roof on EA's presentation. What? You don't like my news station, Tesla? This is the Loreweek. What do you want from me? I don't actually have much to say about For Honor. It was well presented. I did like the idea. The single-player campaign is the only reason I would ever pick it up. We've already seen lots and lots of the multiplayer stuff, so it makes sense that they wouldn't actually show any new multiplayer stuff. That's actually logical. The single-player stuff looks kind of cool, and I do actually like the concept of it, but I unfortunately don't have a lot else to say because there's not really else they showed, other than For Honor, the guy. I will say the idea of it, the thing I was actually reminded of most was actually the Bannerlords stuff I'd seen earlier. Anywho, next game. I already talked about South Park, because someone asked about that in advance. Oh, no, absolutely not, Zone. Are you kidding me? Next thing is... And I already talked about Watch Dogs. Let's talk about Resident Evil 7. So, I actually talked about Resident Evil 7 when it came to when they're actually going live. I also said I called it, and I totally freaking did. I obviously can't prove that to you. So, and I also mentioned something, and again, I know not everyone watches my actual video, so I'm just going to repeat the point here. I had a discussion, this is last year-ish, with a friend who was like, hey, um, and the idea was, it would be cool, a new direction they could take Resident Evil in was going back to the real horror side of things. Now, let me make my point clear. I actually like the embracing silliness, ridiculousness, the camp nature of the Resident Evil series. That is actually one of the things I've always liked about the Resident Evil series. Most notably in Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil Nemesis. And a little bit of Code Veronica had that too. I like that. I like that kind of embracing that. 7, but one thing I've thought many times, because Resident Evil kind of did a downward spiral. Where it happened is dependent on your opinion. Some people think it started spiraling after Code Veronica. Some people think it started spiraling after 4. Some people think it happened after 5. I've never heard anyone say it started spiraling further out from 5. Most people agree that 6 was just kind of bad, and the 3DS one was just kind of bad, and then it just kind of plopped, and then Resident Evil just kind of died. And so, and it does look like Silent Hill in its own presentation, for good and for bad. I applaud it if for no other reason than they're trying something new. I'm serious. I would rather they try something new that failed than keep doing the same damn thing because it's the same damn thing. So if for absolutely no other reason, I am actually very enthused about Resident Evil 7 because they're trying something new with it. They're trying to actually be a survival horror game. They're trying to actually make it a scary game. And I like that. I have no idea if it's going to succeed or not. I have no idea if it's going to be good or not. I have no idea what they're doing with it. So, we'll find out, I suppose, in the future. I mean, we admittedly didn't see a whole lot about it. And that's the only thing I wanted to mention there was my enthusiasm because it's trying something new. Now, what Deacon points out is a valid, if cynical, complaint. The idea that it might be, that's just the demo was like that, and then we go back to our standard bleh, kind of a thing, If they push too hard in the wrong directions, it could really be screwed up. So who knows? Who knows? I am still enthusiastic. I am still optimistic at the moment. Days Gone is the next one I want to talk about. That would be cool. You can, other than the VR part. So, Days Gone. Now, oh, I'm sorry. One more thing I want to say about Resident Evil real quick. I have never been scared by Resident Evil ever. I've been grossed out by it a few times, but from 1 to 5, which is the most recent one I played, I have never actually been scared by it at all. Not once. So, just food for thought there. Anyway, so Days Gone is Days Gone is pretty much Ubisoft the game. It is such an incredibly generic Ubisoft-style game that people were actually saying it was a sequel to several other games before it was actually released what it actually was. That's how pathetic it's gotten with the whole Ubisoft game problem we have here. That's because something new doesn't always work style here. No, Lava. Dude, what the heck? For those of you not aware, Days Gone is the totally not Last of Us 2 game that is technically a follow-up to it's actually a sequel to Ride to Hell Retribution. No, I'm kidding, it's not. But you play biker gang people in a post-apocalyptic zombie-infused future. And seriously, it's basically The Last of Us 2. It really is. In every way that matters, it is Last of Us 2. And they showed some live gameplay that totally wasn't pre-recorded gameplay at all, which I'll talk more about that later. Oh, was that Sony? I'm sorry. You're right, that was Sony. I'm sorry, that's even in the Sony section. I'm sorry. Wow. I I actually put a line there and everything to differentiate the Sony and the Ubisoft section. So it's a Ubisoft game done by Ubisoft with Ubisoft stuff. That is actually kind of sad because that means Sony's doing the Ubisoft game thing too. Because and that's true. That is true. Sony is also doing the Ubisoft game, the game. Because God of War 4, but I'll talk about that in a moment. Anyways, I don't actually have much else to say about Days Gone, other than the fact that they lied to us, and the fact that the gameplay looks so generic and the setting looks so generic that my interest levels absolutely plummeted. Like, just... okay. Okay. Now, I have to admit, zombie fatigue has kind of been hitting me for years at this point. So I'm already at the point automatically where I'm just kind of like... And then add in the other aspects of it that I already just kind of mentioned, and then my interest level just kind of dropped even more, and... I don't know, really? Do we need another post-apocalyptic survival horror game? Don't we have enough of those? So anyways, God of War 4, which is Assassin Kratos. Again, Ubisoft the game, the game. Net positive, Vector Machine. So, the new God of War, let me go ahead and say, first of all, the biggest reason why I'm excited for God of War 4. Okay, you ready for this? Biggest reason I'm actually excited about it is because it is canon with the previous games. That has been confirmed. I know 1,000 different people have told me about the interview that I actually have already seen, where they confirmed, yes, this actually follows God of War 3. Also, apparently, the way they're talking about it is they're not actually going to kill off the kid or Kratos. They're going to have both of them in different styles of playthrough throughout the course of the game. Cool. But yeah, I am actually... so first of all, this is another weird situation. Because like I said, it's Assassin's Kratos. It is Ubisoft the game, okay? Here's the reality, okay? Let me go ahead and explain the positives and the negatives from my perspective. First of all, the negatives. It's copying the same damn thing. And Kratos' story really had been kind of concluded at the end of God of War 3, as Django just pointed out. I mean, that's pretty definitive. His story rather significantly ended. Anything in the future would basically be a brand new story with the same character. Now, as you might imagine, one of the next things I'm going to say is a positive, which is the exact same point I said. Any new story with Kratos is going to be a new story for the same character, which I am okay with. Let me also go ahead and say another positive for me personally. Something that has been asked many, many times is if we go ahead and, you know, is there just the Greek pantheon within the setting of God of War? And the answer has been pretty definitively answered, no. There's also the Norse mythology. And I kind of liked that idea. And I have to admit I am biased towards that idea because I played Age of Mythology. For those of you not aware, Age of Mythology is an RTS, which is, in my personal opinion, the best Age of game, and is awesome. It actually combined the Greek, Norse, Egyptian, and I feel like there was another pantheon in there. Combined these pantheons into one setting. They all coexisted, sort of, with each other, and there was this overall threat where certain members of each pantheon were coordinating with each other in order to accomplish this big evil plot of awesome. It's a good game. I recommend it. You can go pick it up on Steam right now. It's good stuff. So I'm automatically positively inclined because I've already seen that idea of the multi-pantheon one-setting thing. Atlantean, that's another one. Been done. I've seen that done and I've seen it work. Now, there's a second reason I'm positively inclined towards, and that's the fact that they're trying something different than the standard God of War format. In other words, rather than just making it... let's be honest with ourselves. God of War 1 through 3... Well, that's not true. God of War 2, 3, and all the PSP games were all basically the same game in terms of gameplay. They never really changed things up. At no point in time did they add new mechanics or new gameplay styles or new functionality. In fact, arguably, in my personal opinion, God of War 2 was the one that actually got across the gameplay the best by actually really varying up the combat style of the different weapons, whereas God of War 3, several of the weapons actually felt like the same overall approach to weapon, even if they visually looked different. And I've often felt that this is one of the reasons the God of War series petered off. Because even though it was fun, and it was... You have to admit, it's fun. They never did anything with it. So even though this new God of War 4, looks very Assassin's Creedy, and that is a negative, it is also a positive for me because it looks very Assassin's Creedy. In other words, because they're doing something other than the standard God of War gameplay. They're trying something new, and it may fail miserably, but at least they're trying something new. And so I'm automatically positively inclined towards it for that reason. Also, I would be remiss if I did not point out the obvious emotional impact of the fact that Kratos is trying to teach his son that sometimes you have to take life because that's just the horrible world we live in. And the son's like, no, that's terrible, I don't want to do that. And the father's like, yes, but this is a terrible, horrible world, and you have to fight and kill in order to survive in it. That was a great scene. That hit me in the feels, I'm not going to lie. I liked that. And Norse is a really logical direction for them to go in, by the way. Just in general. So, I guess that's all my thoughts of God of War 4. Yep. Actually, at the time, I had a question mark added to it, because at the time when I wrote these notes, we didn't actually know if it was a full reboot or if it was a contiguous. Obviously, we know that now. I already mentioned Resident Evil 7, Days Gone, Spider-Man. I got a lot of flack for this. I stand by my statement. In my opinion, we've never had a great Spider-Man game. We've had acceptable ones, we've had fun ones, but we've never had super amazing, great Spider-Man game, in my opinion. And I know a lot of people disagree with me on that, and that's cool. Differences of opinion are awesome. So, fine, God of War 7 then. So I am genuinely hoping this new Spider-Man game is a great Spider-Man game. Unfortunately, that's pretty much my only thoughts about it, because we know almost nothing about the new Spider-Man game. I have no idea what the hell they're doing with it. Shrug. Hopefulness. Next thing I want to talk about is Horizon, voiced by Ashley Birch. I didn't even realize that until afterwards. So, Horizon is another Ubisoft the game. It looks fun, admittedly. Again, like I said, the Ubisoft the game problem is a legitimate problem. It does. I have to say this though, and I thought this last year too, so my thoughts haven't really changed on Horizon. It looks like the premise alone interests me. The premise has me engaged. This is a world with primitive humans where there's very, very few animals. Yes, I know you guys all picked out an animal. So there are some animals, unless it was a robotic rabbit, which would be funny. But there are very, very few animals, and those animals are all machines. And that's the premise. And people are trying to survive. And it's like the people, despite being super primitive, know how to work with those. There is no Mario World or Mario 2 Overworld theme, Darkrai. Can you be more specific about which Mario 2 you want? If you want the classic Mario 2 song, the one that most often plays, that would be this one. So yeah, the fact that the humans know how to work with the robots, they know how to reprogram them, for example, they know how to do things, to utilize them for their own purposes. Yeah, like I said, the premise has me interested. The gameplay looks like Ubisoft the game. Yeah, I have no idea anything else about it. I'm still interested, but that's about all I've got. Next one I wanted to talk about is... Last one I want to talk about before I get into my final few notes here. Kojima. Now I'm going to go ahead and admit something to you guys you're going to make fun of me for. So during the Sony presentation, which I'll talk more about it as an aggregate in a minute here, they had this thing where the guy gets up there and says, I want you all to help me in welcoming a giant in the gaming industry. And for just a few tiny little seconds, I started thinking, oh crap, they're going to bring Gabe Newell onto the stage. Because let's be honest with ourselves, there's really only one reason why Gabe Newell would come onto the stage at E3. And then it was Kojima. Now, I said this during the E3 thing as well. Kojima gets Kojima gets credit because Konami crapped all over him. Okay, so he had one ticket where he could just be celebrated just for being Kojima. He got one ticket where he could go ahead and be awesome, and everyone could just be like, yes, you're awesome. And that ticket has been expired. So if this happens again, I'm not okay with it anymore. But he did deserve that, people just celebrating him for his accomplishments, because he is a good developer, and he has done some good stuff, and goddammit, he deserved it after Konami. The man has finally unshackled himself from that disgusting company, and I'm glad for that. Now, if he keeps treating himself as a frickin' rock star, well, we've already seen what happens when someone does that, don't we, Romero? Or haven't we, Romero? Sorry. So, now, I don't really have anything to share about Death Stranding. I'm amazed they're making it. There's got to be some copyright issues involved in that. I have no idea what else to say about it other than the fact that I'm very curious where they're going with it. Most of my thoughts are actually about Kojima himself. That's why my note actually is Kojima, not Death Stranding. Because, yeah. Probably Tesla. I don't have anything else to share about Death Stranding. Obviously, it's not the kind of game I'm interested in to begin with. I have no idea, Roku. I mean, I guess it's an interesting psychological experience for people to try and be put into a situation where they could, excel in a manner that they otherwise feel like they should be able to, but probably wouldn't in real life. That kind of it's a sort of a wish fulfillment thing. At least that's my assumption. Not that I'm aware, Saldir. Not off the top of my head, anyways. I've been picking up bits and pieces of it for a while. Anywho, so yeah, like I said, they didn't really show anything of significance during Death Stranding, so I got nothing else to share about that. So yeah, we're now down to the point. Let's go ahead and talk about a couple of Nintendo things before we talk about my last point. Hang on, we should get some Nintendo music. Obviously, this is technically Nintendo music, but I want real Nintendo music. You're gonna have to give me a moment, though. We'll go with this one. So, first of all, they showed off the new Pokemon game. Now, let me just go ahead and say that the new Pokemon game presentation went on way too long. You don't sell a Pokemon game by having people sit around and talk about catching Pokemon and fighting Pokemon. No. If they had chopped that down considerably, it would have worked. But it just dragged on and on and on, and that's not what you do to present a Pokemon game, least of all at E3. Now, let me explain something I've already explained. I know my Nintendo presentation got chopped off because we actually lost internet, and by we, I mean the local internet station actually went down, so the whole region here was actually out of internet for a while. So some of this might be repetition, some of it might not. I once I got internet back, I joined back in chat and kept talking, but I never actually started the stream up again. So let me just say I am very excited about the new Pokemon. It does look good. I'm picking up Moon for anybody who's curious. Very, very much looking forward to that. And that's all I really have to share about it. What I do want to talk about, though, is the why it is that they basically spent all their money and all their budget and all of their stuff celebrating this new Zelda game. There's actually two big reasons for this. First of all, because I like it better than the Sun, Tesla? I don't know. Also, it's got the cooler Legendary, although I didn't know that when I already decided. So, no, I picked Moon before I knew about the Legendary. First of all, for those of you not aware, this is actually a really big anniversary for Legend of Zelda this year, which is funny because Legend of Zelda won't be coming out till next year. But that's the first big reason why they really went all out in presenting Zelda. This is the 30th anniversary for Zelda. They wanted to showcase it, yada, yada, yada. My friend Pax had a rather derogatory comment to make, valid or not, which was the fact that the game looks astonishingly complete, and he was complaining that we're not getting this game for another year. Keep in mind that depending on release schedules, the absolute, if everything goes according to plan currently, the absolute minimum amount of time it will take for this new Zelda game to come out will be 7 months. Bare minimum. And even that's unlikely. It's probably going to be closer to 9 to 10 months. Almost a full year before this freaking game comes out. I am admittedly already super excited for it. A lot. But damn it! As I said before, I can't maintain hype that long. So I've basically pushed Zelda to the back of my mind and will not be thinking about it until then. We do know a couple things. I've talked about some of this stuff in my forum. They've actively mentioned that they removed stuff from the game for the demo. They have flat out confirmed there will be NPCs and villages and stuff on the plateau that we didn't actually see in the actual game. Obviously, because they didn't want to spoil it. They keep talking about not wanting to spoil story stuff. And this is another one of those things that makes me wonder. Because there's really only two big reasons to not want to spoil story stuff. Either there is no story to be spoiled. Am I just on the same loop? There we go. Or there's a lot of story stuff and they actually don't want it spoiled, a heavy story focus. And I'm hopeful it's a heavy story focus. And the main reason I'm hopeful it's a heavy story focus is because Miyamoto has stayed out of the production of this game quite a bit. And again, I mean, no offense to Miyamoto, but the man is very anti-story. And Aonuma, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is much more in favor of story. So, yay. I like everything about the new Zelda. I am so 100% jazzed, hyped, sold, everything. It looks absolutely freaking amazing. I cannot speak anything negatively about it. I did not see anything about that gameplay, about the cooking mechanic, about the climbing, about the new stamina bar, which actually works as opposed to one in Skyward Sword, about the fact that you can actually eat while climbing to extend your stamina bar, about the combat, about the burning stuff, about the interaction with the open world, the way open world is presented, the openness of the exploration, the fact that you can do the shrines in any order, the fact that the shrines function as a fast travel mechanism that you earn in order to zip around, the fact that you can decide the course in which you do different zones, just the fact that you have multiple options to prevent yourself from getting cold or hot. No negatives for me, Zoan. Sorry, dude. For me, I have seen no negatives. None. The fact that you can put your own waypoints and say, I see that spot over there and I want to go there, bzz, and put it up there. Yeah, I am sold. And I'll probably be buying the Wii U version, but then again, we know nothing about the NX. We know nothing about the NX. So I can't really say if I'm getting an NX or not, because I have no freaking idea. Hang on, let me just go ahead. So, I lied. See, I don't agree with that, Tesla. I really don't. However, that is my opinion, not yours. Obviously, several of my viewers dislike the new Zelda, and that's awesome. I'm with it. Quite a few negativities being brought up. However, I just remembered I do actually have one negative. I forgot about this. So there's one negative for the game for me. Literally one. And that's the fact... There's no getting around. This is going to be a controversial thing. Sorry, guys. That's the fact that they did not offer the option for Link to be gender selectable. Now, let me go ahead and say this flat out. It's not a big deal. Okay? It's not. Let's just man up and admit that it's not a big deal if Link is male or female. That's not my complaint. That's not the negative. The negative is the excuse given. There were two excuses that were given. One of them is, well, if we're going to have a female Link, we might as well just make him be Zelda. And if Zelda is the one fighting, then what is Link doing? Really? That's That's your complaint? That's your excuse? The fact that you can't think of anything for Link to be doing in this story if Zelda is the playable character? What the crap hell is wrong with you? Sterling already did a video on this. And he kind of made the same exact points I'm going to make. Let's see. So you can't have Link fighting alongside Zelda, like we've actually already have had in Spirit Tracks. Never mind Hyrule Warriors. Or how about the fact that Link could serve some other function in the story? Literally any function ever that would require exactly no thought whatsoever. I mean, anyone can come up with any other reason or any other function for Link to serve other than being the guy with the sword. Not that hard. It takes no effort. It takes no creativity to come up with a reason. But, oh, you can't do anything. It's a dumb excuse. I hate dumb excuses. And it is, let's be clear here, an excuse, not a reason. And that's my big problem with it. Next question, or next excuse that was given. Well, it would mess with the balance of the Triforce. That is the dumbest thing I've heard recently, and I've heard some dumb things recently. That is dumb. The idea that Link being any different gender would mess with the balance of the Triforce because Zelda's already female is dumb. You know what I would have liked? I would have liked it if they said, well, we wanted to tell a story with male Link. And I would have said, okay. And I would have never even brought this point up. I would have said, it's a shame we can't have that choice. And I would have never even brought it up again. Whoop. I would have never even brought up the point again. Because like I said initially, it's not a big deal. It's not an issue. It's not sexist. It's not feminist. It's not anything. It doesn't frickin' matter. It doesn't matter. The reason I bring it up at all, the only reason this is newsworthy at all, is because of their dumbass excuses that they give for why they did it. That's what pisses me off, and that's my only negative for the game. The fact that they came up with a dumb excuse for Link to be male, for Link to be restricted to male. By the way, to explain this away, the Linkle thing, what happened was so many people reacted to the female Link from the initial trailer, the people working on Hyrule Warriors, Platinum Games, I want to say? No, it wasn't Platinum Games, it was Team Ninja. Team Ninja was working on Hyrule Warriors, and the guy working there was actually inspired by the idea of a female Link, and crafted Linkle as a reaction to that, and that's why Linkle exists. There was never any intention for Linkle to actually be in Breath of the Wind. Anywho, final thing to talk about is Metroid, obviously. No, final thing to talk about is the difference between Sony's presentation and Nintendo's presentation. Now, let me go ahead and say this flat out. I think Sony had an awesome presentation at this year's E3, and I think Nintendo had an awesome presentation at this year's E3. I think they were both in completely the opposite directions of each other, but I think that's kind of the point. So what Sony did, let's explain why I feel Sony did really well at E3. First of all, lots of gameplay. There were a few, mix-ups on the way, but they showed lots and lots and lots of actual gameplay footage and gameplay trailers. I mean, the God of War 4 trailer was, like 5 minutes long or something like that? It was huge. Lots and lots of stuff was demonstrated for that, and I like that. They did a really good job of it. It was also bam, bam, bam. The pacing was spot on. They just showed trailer. Guy shows up for a second and says, "Hey, we want to show something else off." Gets off the stage after about a minute. Trailer. It was exactly how that should have been. It was a very well presented press conference, and I like that. That was a very, very good presentation from a professional standpoint, okay? Now, I was a little irritated at every other conference because, now, I can't prove this 100%, but I am of the 100% opinion, I have no doubt on this fact, that other than Nintendo and a few PC things, None of the other conferences who kept saying, we're going to have people on stage playing the game, I don't think they were actually playing the game. Now, I made this point a few dozen times, but let me make this point one more time again. I'm not against pre-recorded gameplay for a footage trailer. In fact, I am in favor of it. What I am against is you frickin' lying to me about it. I hate that crap. Don't lie to me. Don't put someone on stage and have them fiddling with the controller, pretending to play the game. This is not the first time E3 has done this, by the way. This is actually kind of a common thing at E3. There have been previous E3s where it's way, way, way more obvious that they were obviously pretending to play the game, you know, when they weren't. And, but regardless of that fact, I wish they had just been honest and said, this is pre-recorded gameplay. Because pre-recorded gameplay has a purpose. It's showing off the gameplay in a refined thing. I made the parallel that it's basically tassing it. You are effectively making a TAS of the gameplay to show off the gameplay at its finest. There was actually a bit of gameplay that they showed with Zelda Breath of the Wind that was pre-recorded gameplay. And they flat out said, this is pre-recorded gameplay. I actually had a guy back at the office, you know, work through, and he was really good at the game, and I asked him to record this. He's the guy who did the really awesome maneuver, which was like, charge towards the enemy with the horse, jump off the horse, like, slow down time, and then do the shot in the eye, and then slash at the eye thing in order to kill the boss. That was cool. But that's clearly pre-recorded gameplay. That guy probably did that like 20 times to get that to work, to get that particular recording, right? And he admitted it. And this is the difference between Sony and Nintendo's presentations. Because Nintendo, it was, again, very, very obvious that it was someone there, right there on the set, playing the game. And I described several of the ways it was obvious while they were going through it. But they were clearly and demonstrably playing. That person right there was playing. They even had screw-ups. They even had a thing where they accidentally forgot to turn off the demo timer. And so in the middle of the presentation, they just had a screw-up. And that is one of the reasons you do pre-recorded games. That's one of the reasons you have pre-recorded gameplay. But at least Nintendo was honest about it and said, you know, this is me actually playing, and the other section they showed when they were just talking was the pre-recorded gameplay. Now, like I said, though, the professional side of me likes the pre-recorded gameplay better. I look at that and I'm like, okay, I like that. I like the crisp professionalism nature of it. However, the gamer in me, the person in me, wants to see someone actually playing the game, wants to see something live. I want to see the screw-ups. I want to see how it actually plays. I want to see how it actually feels to someone who doesn't know what they're doing. I want to know how it feels to actually play the game, and the closest way I'm going to actually be seeing that is if I'm watching it live, someone else who isn't that great at the game, who's just trying to play the game right there to show some stuff off. And I like that. I would have rather had that kind of gameplay in general, even though the professional in me admits it is not a better way to present something at a conference. And that's the last point I wanted to make, the difference between Sony and Nintendo's approach. Because Sony was, you know, trailer, gameplay trailer, talk, gameplay trailer. By contrast, the Nintendo thing was, let's sit and talk about this aspect of the new Zelda. And then let's sit and talk about this aspect of the new Zelda. And they'd show it off a bit, you know. That's the difference in the two perspectives. And I think that says a lot about Nintendo, the developer, the non-business side of Nintendo. I think that says a lot about them. Because Nintendo has always really, especially lately, has really been pushing that whole we're gamers too philosophy. You know, they had people up there who were clearly nervous, who clearly were not sure what they were going to do, and were trying to come up with things to talk about, and there's like, oh man, I can't wait to show off this thing because I actually really like this aspect of the game. You could tell there was some very genuine, serious enthusiasm there, and people who actually were fans of the games that they were making, or they were working on, or they were helping. And I like that. There's a genuine sincerity about that. So, I know you're all going to ask this. I know you're all going to say it. Who do I think won E3? Nintendo. I'm sorry. I as much as Sony absolutely nailed it out of the park, Nintendo spoke to me a lot more. And it's not just because it's Zelda, and it's not just because it's Nintendo, it's because of everything I just said. Because the fact that Nintendo was real people sitting down there screwing up, making mistakes, being nervous, and just trying to showcase something that they thought was awesome. And that speaks to me more than anything else. You show me a crisp, well done... Oh, Sony gets second place easily. You show me a crisp, well done presentation, and I'll applaud it. I'll even be interested in it. But you show me a guy standing up there and a person who's just like, I just want to show off this game and it's kind of thing. There's like, oh, shoot, I screwed this up. That's going to speak to me. Make sense? Oh, shoot, I didn't talk about Paper Mario. So, okay, really real brief. I have seen nothing that's made me disinclined to like the new... Yeah, the PC gaming was really good too, absolutely. I have seen nothing so far that's made me disinclined towards the new Paper Mario. That being said, I'm really scared about the new Paper Mario, because it looks like it's actually going to be an RPG again, which was my biggest complaint with Sticker Star. I could have endured the ammo system of the stickers if it was actually an RPG underneath that, and it wasn't. There was like no story, no characterization, no humor, no plot, no nothing. All of the meat in an RPG was absent of Sticker Star, and that's why I hated it. If this new one has the meat underneath of it, I'm okay with it. I will endure this whole weird combat system that they've got going, which I'll freely admit looks kind of weird, if they give me the true meat of a Paper Mario game. So that's my final thoughts. Any questions before I chop this off? Because this will be the time for it. Ugh. I am slightly hopeful because this game was awesome. I don't know if you can see this. This game was awesome. Phantom Luigi there. So, I am hopeful. We'll see, though. We'll see. I don't really, Oh my god, it's King Hippo. And now it's Ninja Gaiden. God, we're just bouncing around all over the port. I'm not seeing any more questions. I'm going to give it a couple more seconds because I know there's a big delay here. And I know not everyone types as quickly as I do. Next stream? No planned next stream. That's not true. The next planned stream is on my website, and you can go see it right now. No real thoughts on State of Decay 2. Sorry. I don't really have anything to share about it. So. Oh, by the way, guys, this stream is only available on Xbox One and Windows 10 exclusive. No, So, yeah, unless... I'm going to go ahead and chop this off. Like I said, no stream is planned until we get to SGDQ, or until I'm done with the features. All of my time and attention is working on the show, on the YouTube features side of things, so no streams planned in the future. And for those curious, yes, I have... I guess that's another thing, I'm sorry. Summer Games Done Quick 2016, it's an event, Tesla. So one last thing, I'm sorry, because I know some of you are curious. For my 4-job fiesta, I have decided to temporarily quit. Because I actually sat down, I actually did the math, and I was at absolute optimal DPS, about 5,000 damage away from beating Xdeath, and that was assuming all 4 people were up by about the point at which he would start doing things that there's no dodging and no avoiding. And doing that last 5,000 damage with the kind of DPS output I had would require about 2 full rounds of having all 4 people going full tilt with no misses. And even getting to that point was very low chance. So the only way for my 4-job fiesta to continue is to grind. It is the only option. It is mathematically infinitesimal to beat Xdeath with the way I am right now. And I don't have time to grind. I got to work on the features. So I have decided after serious thought, and I consulted my sister on this too, not to actually quit the 4-job fiesta run. I'm simply going to pause it because, frankly, I don't have time to just grind FF5. I'm going through Suikoden 2 right now. So like I said, the features side of things is going to take the focus right now. And then, the once I'm done with the features, once I feel like I am caught up with the features, and I have a specific time in mind at which I will feel like I'm caught up with the features, then I'll go back to regular streaming. I've got a lot of explorations planned, and I have several other major streams I want to go through, including a Pokemon stream I've really been looking forward to. I want to finish going through Homeworld Deserts of Karak. I want to finish streaming Just Cause 3. There's a list on my website. You can go ahead and see it there. In answer to Neerozaz's question really quick, because it was not requested. I only ruminate games that are requested, and Human Revolution and the original were both requested separately by separate people. So that's the reason. Now, I hope that answers everyone's questions. I'm going to leave the stream up for just a little bit after I chop off with the recording. But for those of you on YouTube, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.